It was 10 degrees below zero on Christmas Eve. That wasn't a figure of speech. It was the actual temperature when my father, Gregory, shoved me out the back door and slid the heavy deadbolt home. My crime. I had talked back during the appetizer course. I stood there in just a thin sweater, watching through the frosted glass. My teeth chattered so hard they ached. Inside, the house was glowing with golden light. I could see my stepmother, Patricia, laughing as she handed my father a glass of wine. They looked like a perfect holiday card. I looked like trash left on the porch to freeze. My fingers were turning blue. I truly thought I was going to die there, frozen and forgotten in my own backyard. Then, bright headlights cut through the dark. A long, black limousine crunched up the snowy driveway and stopped right in front of me. The back door opened, and a woman stepped out into the blizzard in sharp high heels. It was my grandmother, Josephine Whitmore, the billionaire everyone thought was dead to us. She looked at me shaking in the snow. She didn't offer a hug. She looked at the house, then at me, and said just one word to her security team: demolish. That was the moment I realized Christmas miracles don't always come wrapped in paper. Sometimes they arrive armored. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me, where in the world are you watching from? I hadn't seen my grandmother in 7 years. The last time I saw Josephine Whitmore, I was 19. I was leaving for college, and she was standing on the steps of her own estate, watching me go. She didn't wave then, and she didn't wave now. She just sat there in the back of the limousine, framed by the dark leather interior, looking like a queen on a throne. The wind howled around me. It was a physical blow, pushing me sideways. I couldn't stop shaking. My body felt like it was vibrating so hard that my bones might snap. Well, she said. Her voice was calm. It wasn't loud, but it cut right through the noise of the storm. Get in, Sloane. You're letting the heat out. I didn't have the strength to argue. I didn't have the strength to be shocked. I stumbled forward. My legs felt like blocks of wood. I almost fell into the car. The leather seat was warm. The air inside smelled expensive, like old paper, vanilla, and something sharp like gin. The heavy door thudded shut behind me, sealing out the wind. The silence was instant. I sat there, dripping melted snow onto the floor mats. My teeth were still chattering. Clack, clack, clack. It was the only sound in the car. I hugged my chest, trying to squeeze some warmth back into my lungs. My fingers were white. They didn't look like my hands anymore. They looked like wax. Josephine didn't gasp. She didn't cry out. She didn't pull me into a frantic hug and ask me if I was okay. That's what a normal grandmother would do, but Josephine wasn't normal. She was a titan. She built industries. She destroyed competitors. She didn't do pity, she just looked at me. Her eyes traveled from my wet, frozen hair down to my shivering knees. She studied me like I was a spreadsheet that had an error in it. Then, she moved. She reached beside her and picked up a coat. It was a heavy, dark wool trench coat. It looked military. She tossed it across the seat. It landed heavily on my lap. Put your arms through, she ordered. Hypothermia is a boring way to die, Sloane. It's messy and it's undignified. I fumbled with the coat. My fingers were so stiff they wouldn't work properly. It took me 3 tries just to find the sleeve. The wool was thick and scratchy, but it was warm. It held the heat of the car. I pulled it tight around me, burying my face in the collar. I started to cry, but no tears came out. It was just dry, racking sobs that hurt my chest. Josephine poured a glass of water from a crystal decanter. She held it out to me. Drink, she said. Then breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Control yourself. I took the glass with 2 hands to keep from dropping it. The water was room temperature. I drank it in one gulp. I thought you were in Europe, I rasped. My voice sounded broken. Dad said you were. He said you were sick. He said you were in a home in Switzerland. Josephine let out a short, sharp sound. It might have been a laugh, but her face didn't move. Gregory says a lot of things, she said. He prefers reality to be adjustable. It makes him feel like a god. She turned her head and looked out the window. The windows of the limo were heavily tinted. We could see out, but no one could see in. I followed her gaze. We were parked right in front of the house. The Barrett estate. It was a monster of a house, brick and stone, 3 stories tall, with massive pillars in the front. It looked beautiful in the snow. It looked like the kind of house where happy families lived. Through the large bay window of the dining room, I could see them. The glass was clear in the center, framed by frost. It was like watching a movie screen. My father, Gregory, was standing at the head of the table. He was wearing his velvet dinner jacket. He held a glass of red wine in one hand. He was smiling. It was his charming smile, the one he used on investors, neighbors, and people he wanted something from. My stepmother, Patricia, was sitting to his right. She was laughing. She had her hand on his arm, looking up at him with adoration. She was wearing a red silk dress that cost more than my first car. And there was Reese, my stepsister. She was sitting in my spot. She was opening a gift. I saw the flash of silver wrapping paper being torn away. She held up a handbag. I recognized the brand immediately. It was the bag I had mentioned wanting 3 months ago, back when I still thought my opinion mattered to them. Reese hugged the bag to her chest and beamed at my father. They looked warm. They looked rich. They looked perfect. Look at them, Josephine said softly. A performance. They don't care, I whispered. The realization hit me harder than the cold had. I've been out here for an hour. It's 10 below zero, and they're just eating dinner. I watched my father raise his glass. He was making a toast. I could imagine the words. He was probably toasting to family, to success, to the holiday spirit. He didn't look at the back door. He didn't check his watch. He didn't wonder where his daughter was. He thinks he's won, Josephine said. She wasn't looking at the family anymore. She was looking at the structure of the house itself. He thinks he has successfully discarded the problem. That's you, my dear. You are the problem he wanted to solve tonight. I just wanted some mashed potatoes, I said, the absurdity of it bubbling up. That's how it started. I asked for the potatoes before he said grace. It wasn't about the potatoes, Sloane. Josephine turned back to me. Her eyes were hard, like gray stones. Men like Gregory don't punish you for what you do. They punish you for who you are. He locked you out because you exist. And as long as you exist, he knows he's a fraud. I looked back at the window. My father took a sip of wine. He looked so satisfied. He looked like a king in his castle. He didn't know his castle was under siege. He didn't know that 10 yards away, inside a black car invisible against the night, the real owner of his world was watching. He's comfortable, I said. Yes, Josephine said. She leaned back against the leather seat and crossed her legs. Enjoy the view, Sloane, memorize it. Because comfort is expensive and Gregory is about to find out he can't pay the bill. I pulled the wool coat tighter. The shivering was starting to stop, replaced by a dull ache in my bones. I watched my father laugh at something Patricia said. He didn't know his show was already over. To understand why I was freezing on the patio, you have to understand Gregory Barrett. My father wasn't just a strict parent. He was a thermostat of control. He didn't walk into a room, he managed it. He decided what the temperature of our lives would be. If he was happy, we were allowed to be warm. If he was angry, or worse, if he was bored, he dropped the temperature until we were shivering. You never knew what would trigger it. It could be a grade. It could be the way you chewed your food. It could be the tone of voice you used when you said good morning. He didn't hit us. He never raised a hand. He didn't have to. Violence is messy. Gregory preferred psychological warfare. He called it building character. When I was 12, I left a light on in the hallway. He didn't yell. He just unscrewed every light bulb in my bedroom and bathroom. For a week, I had to live in the dark after sunset. He called it teaching me the value of electricity. When I was 16, I got a B on a history paper. He took the door off my bedroom hinges. Privacy is a privilege for achievers, he told me calmly. Mediocrity belongs in the open. I grew up thinking this was normal. I thought all fathers were like this. I thought love was something you had to buy with perfection, and even then, the price could change without notice. Then there was Patricia. My stepmother didn't care about character. She cared about optics. She lived for the photograph, the social media post, the whisper of envy from the neighbors. She was beautiful, thin, and terrified of aging. To Patricia, I wasn't a daughter. I was a prop. If I looked good, I was useful. If I made the family look successful, she would link her arm in mine and call me her sweet girl. But the second the camera was off, the warmth vanished. She treated my emotions like stains on a white carpet. If I was sad, I was being difficult. If I was angry, I was being ungrateful. If I was hurt, I was being dramatic. Smile, Sloane, she would hiss at me before parties. Nobody likes a sour face, it ruins the aesthetic. And then there was Reese. Reese was 2 years younger than me. She was Patricia's daughter from her first marriage. She had golden hair, big blue eyes, and the soul of a piranha. Reese didn't just want things. She wanted my things. It started with toys when we were kids. If I had a doll, she wanted it. If I gave it to her, she broke it within an hour. As we got older, it became clothes, then friends, then credit. Reese realized very early on that Gregory pitted us against each other. It was a sport to him. He would put a metaphorical piece of meat in the middle of the room and watch us fight for it. The meat was his approval. Reese learned the game faster than I did. She learned that the best way to get Gregory's approval was to make me look bad. If something broke, Reese said I did it. If money was missing from Patricia's purse, Reese said I took it. She would look at me with those wide, innocent eyes and say, "I promised not to tell Sloane, but Mom asked." I spent my entire childhood defending myself against crimes I didn't commit. "I didn't do it," I would scream. "Lowering your voice is the first sign of guilt," Gregory would say smoothly, not looking up from his newspaper. By the time I was 25, I was exhausted. I was broken. I had tried so hard to be the daughter they wanted. I went to the business school Gregory chose. I dressed the way Patricia wanted. I let Reese take the credit for my ideas. And where did it get me? It got me here. Tonight, Christmas Eve. The incident that led to the lockout wasn't even a fight. That's the tragedy of it. It was a moment of honesty. We were sitting at the dinner table. The appetizers had just been served, shrimp cocktail, Gregory's favorite. The house was decorated to perfection. The tree was 12 feet tall, covered in white lights and silver ribbons. I had come home because I had nowhere else to go. My startup, a tech company I had poured my soul into for 3 years, had collapsed last week. I was bankrupt. I had lost my apartment. I was humiliated. I thought foolishly that family was where you went when you fell. I thought that if I was truly at rock bottom, they might actually help me up. I was wrong. Dinner started with Gregory making a joke about my failure. "Well," he said, dipping a shrimp into sauce, "at least now we know you don't have the head for business. It's a relief, really. Now you can focus on finding a husband to support you, maybe someone who needs a secretary." Patricia giggled. "Oh, Greg, stop, she tried. It's adorable that she tried." "I didn't just try," I said. My voice was quiet. I was staring at my plate. "I built something. It failed because my lead investor pulled out without notice. It wasn't incompetence, it was sabotage." "Excuses," Gregory said. He didn't look at me. "Winners find a way. Losers find excuses." "I'm not a loser," I said. The table went silent. Gregory put his fork down. The metal clinked against the china. It sounded like a gunshot. "Excuse me," he said softly. "I said I'm not a loser," I repeated. I looked up. I looked him in the eye. "I worked 18-hour days. I built the code from scratch. I lost everything, Dad. I lost my home. I don't need a lecture, I just need my dad." The air in the room dropped 20 degrees. I saw Patricia's eyes widen. She looked terrified not for me but for the awkwardness of the moment. "You are a guest in this house," Gregory said. His voice was very low, very calm, "and you are speaking to me with a tone of disrespect." "I'm not a guest," I said. My voice shook. "I'm your daughter." "You are a mouth," he said. "A loud, ungrateful mouth, and I am tired of listening to it." He stood up. He walked over to my chair. I thought he was going to yell. Instead, he took my arm. His grip was like iron. He pulled me up. "You need to cool off," he said. He dragged me to the back door. Patricia didn't move. Reese took a bite of her shrimp, watching me with a bored expression. "Dad, please," I said. "It's freezing out there. I don't have my coat." "Then you should have thought about that before you raised your voice," he said. He opened the door. The wind hit me instantly, a wall of white ice. He shoved me. I stumbled out onto the patio, slipping on the snow. "5 minutes," he said, "to think about your tone." He slammed the door. I heard the lock click. 5 minutes turned into 10. 10 turned into 30. 30 turned into an hour. I knocked on the glass. I begged. I saw them eating the main course. I saw them laughing. They couldn't hear me over the wind, or maybe they just chose not to listen. That was the truth of the Barrett family. They didn't feed on love. They fed on power. And tonight, Gregory felt powerful because he could make me freeze. He felt big because he could make me small. Sitting in the limo, warmed by my grandmother's coat, I realized something. Every insult they threw at me, every punishment, every lesson, it wasn't because I was bad. It was because they were empty. They needed my pain to fill themselves up. Gregory needed someone to control. Patricia needed someone to look down on. Reese needed someone to steal from. I was their fuel. I looked at the window again. Gregory was pouring more wine. The shivering had stopped completely now. A strange, cold heat was rising in my chest. It wasn't the heat of the car. It was anger, pure, distilled anger. For 26 years I had believed them. I believed I was the problem. I believed I was lucky they kept me around. I looked at Josephine. "They're not a family," I said. The words tasted like ash. "They're vampires." Josephine nodded slowly. She reached for the intercom button near the door handle. "Vampires don't do well in the light," she said. "And they certainly don't do well when you cut off their food supply." She pressed the button. "Driver," she said, "is the team in position?" "Yes, Mrs. Whitmore," the driver's voice came back over the speaker. "Ready on your command." Josephine looked at me. A tiny, dangerous smile touched her lips. "You've been the victim for a long time, Sloane," she said. "Does it fit you?" "No," I said. "It's too tight." "Good," she said. "Then let's take it off." I looked back at the house one last time. I saw my father laughing. I saw my stepmother preening. I saw the warmth I had craved my whole life. And I realized I didn't want inside anymore. I didn't want to be warm with them. I wanted to burn it down. Josephine didn't comfort me. She didn't pat my hand or tell me it was going to be okay. She just watched me. Her eyes were sharp and clear, like a hawk spotting a mouse in the grass. "You're still shaking," she observed. I'm cold, I said. No, she corrected. You're warm now. The car is 70 degrees. You're shaking because you're in shock. You're shaking because your reality is breaking apart. She poured herself a drink from the crystal decanter. Amber liquid swirled in the glass. She took a slow sip, never taking her eyes off me. Tell me, Sloane, why do you think he did it? I pulled the wool coat tighter around my neck. The smell of expensive fabric was comforting, but her question made my stomach turn. Because I talked back, I whispered. Because I ruined dinner. Because I'm a failure with a bankrupt company and he's ashamed of me. Wrong, Josephine said. She set the glass down with a firm click. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. She leaned forward. For the first time, her face softened just a fraction. It wasn't pity, it was intensity. He didn't lock you out because you disrespected him, she said. Her voice was low and steady. He didn't lock you out because you failed. He locked you out because he felt small. I frowned. Small. He's the biggest man in the room. He controls everything. He owns the house, the cars, the accounts. He owns nothing, Josephine cut in. We will get to that later. But look at the man, Sloane. Really look at him. She pointed a manicured finger toward the window. Through the tinted glass, I looked at my father. He was laughing at the head of the table, looking flushed and happy. Weak men, Josephine said, need a witness to their power. They need someone freezing outside so they can feel warm inside. If everyone is happy, Gregory feels useless. If everyone is safe, he feels invisible. He needs a victim to prove he exists. Her words hit me like a physical blow. He thinks you are his punishment, she continued. He thinks you are the burden he has to carry, but he's wrong. You aren't his punishment, Sloane, you're his fuel. I stared at her. Fuel? He burns you to keep himself warm, she said simply. He takes your confidence, your happiness, and your peace, and he throws it into the fire of his own ego. And you let him. You stand there and you hand him the wood. I don't let him, I argued, my voice rising slightly. I fight back, I try to please him, I try to be good. Exactly, she said. You try, you dance for him, you cry for him. You beg for him to let you back inside. That is the fuel. He loves your desperation. It makes him feel like a god. She sat back. Stop dancing, Sloane. I looked down at my hands. They were pink now, the blood returning. It's not that easy, I said. He's my dad. I just wanted him to be proud of me. When I lost my company, I just wanted him to say it was going to be okay. He was never going to say that, Josephine said ruthlessly. Because if you are okay, he isn't needed. Gregory needs you to be broken. Why do you think he made jokes about your failure? Why do you think he humiliated you in front of your stepmother? She paused, letting the silence hang in the air. He was glad you failed, she said. My head snapped up. That's not true. He invested in my education. He wants me to succeed. He wants you to succeed enough to make him look good, but not enough to not need him, she said. There is a difference. A strong father builds his children up so they can fly away. A weak father clips their wings so they have to stay in the nest and beg for worms. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. This time, it wasn't from the cold. It was from the truth. It explained everything. It explained why he never praised my good grades, only criticized the bad ones. It explained why he ignored my successful launch but celebrated my crash. It explained why he pitied me. Pity is a form of power. If you pity someone, you are above them. He's a bully, I whispered. He is a small man in a big chair, Josephine corrected. And tonight, we are going to take the chair away. She reached into her purse, a small black clutch, and pulled out a compact mirror. She snapped it open and handed it to me. Look at yourself, she ordered. I looked. I looked like a wreck. My hair was wet and matted against my forehead. My mascara had run down my cheeks in dark streaks. My lips were chapped. My eyes were red and swollen. I looked terrible, I said, turning the mirror away. No, Josephine said. She reached out and tilted the mirror back toward my face. Look closer, you look like a survivor. I stared at my own reflection. Behind the mess, behind the smeared makeup, my eyes looked different. They weren't pleading anymore. They were hard. He thinks you're out there crying, Josephine said. He thinks you're huddled by the door, shivering, waiting for his mercy. He thinks that in 10 minutes he will open the door and you will crawl back in, apologizing for ruining Christmas. You will be grateful. You will be submissive, and he will feel like the benevolent king who forgave the peasant. She snapped the mirror shut. Is that what's going to happen, Sloane? I looked at the house. I looked at the man who had left me to freeze. I remembered the feeling of the ice in my bones. I remembered the way Reese smirked. No, I said. The word was solid, heavy. Good, Josephine said. Then dry your face. The time for crying is over. The time for business has begun. She handed me a tissue. I wiped the black streaks from my cheeks. I smoothed my hair back. What do we do? I asked. Josephine smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf who sees an open gate. We teach him a lesson about temperature, she said. He likes to control the environment. Let's see how he handles it when the environment controls him. Josephine pressed the intercom button again. Driver, she said. Her voice was crisp like she was ordering a coffee. Cut the power to the main house. Copy that, Mrs. Whitmore, the driver replied. I sat up straighter. You can do that. I own the power grid for this entire sector of the estate, she said calmly. I installed it in 1998. Gregory never bothered to change the access codes. He assumes utilities are just magic that happens for him. She turned her gaze to the house. Watch, I watched. Inside the dining room, the scene was still picture perfect. Patricia was raising a fork to her mouth. Gregory was pouring more wine. Reese was holding up her new bag for a selfie. Then, in a single heartbeat, the world ended. Blink. The house vanished. The golden light of the chandelier died. The twinkling white lights on the 12-foot Christmas tree went black. The lamps in the hallway, the porch lights, the glowing windows upstairs, all of it was instantly extinguished. The house became a giant, black tomb against the snowy night. I heard a faint gasp from inside the car, but it was my own. It was shocking to see something so big go so dark so fast. Phase 1 complete, Josephine murmured. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The house was just a silhouette. Then I saw the panic. Tiny beams of light appeared in the dining room window. Cell phone flashlights. They were jerky and frantic. I saw the beam of light swing wildly as someone, probably Patricia, stood up too fast. I could imagine the chaos inside. The confusion, the sudden jarring silence that comes when the hum of the refrigerator and the furnace stops. It's going to get cold in there, I said. Yes, Josephine said. It is. The insulation in that house is old. Without the furnace, the temperature will drop 10 degrees in the first hour. By midnight, they will be seeing their breath. She adjusted her coat. He wanted you to feel the cold, Sloane. Now he gets to share it. I watched the flashlight beams moving around the room. I saw a figure. My father moved to the window. He pressed his face against the glass, trying to see out. He couldn't see us. The limo was dark, parked in the shadows of the driveway, the engine idling silently. We were invisible, but he was illuminated by the flashlight in his hand. I saw his face. He looked annoyed. Not scared yet, just irritated. He was probably thinking it was a power outage caused by the storm. He was probably blaming the city, or the weather, or the electric company. He didn't know it was personal. He's checking the breaker box, I guessed. He'll go to the basement. Let him go, Josephine said. The breakers won't work. I had the main line physically disconnected at the junction box at the end of the driveway. My team handled it while we were talking. I looked at her, stunned. You brought a team. I never travel alone, she said. And I never enter a hostile negotiation without leverage. Leverage, that's what this was. It wasn't a family visit. It was a hostile takeover. We sat in the dark car, watching the frantic fireflies of their flashlights. I saw Reese moving toward the hallway, probably to get a coat. I saw Patricia standing still, hugging herself. And then, a strange feeling washed over me. For the last hour, I had been the victim. I had been the girl locked outside. I had been the one shivering, powerless, waiting for someone to let me in. But now, I was on the other side of the glass. I was warm, I was safe, and I was watching them scramble in the dark. The power dynamic had flipped so fast I almost got whiplash. How does it feel? Josephine asked. She was watching me, not the house. I took a deep breath. I filled my lungs with the warm air of the car. I searched for the right word. I feel like the fuse. Good, she said. Because you are. She reached into the side pocket of the door and pulled out a file folder. She tossed it onto my lap. Read this, she said. We have about 10 minutes before the cold really starts to bite them. You need to know what you're walking into. I opened the folder. A small reading light clicked on above my head. The first page was a document titled Whitmore Holdings Asset Transfer. I scanned the lines. Legal jargon, dates, signatures. And then I saw it. Unauthorized withdrawal. Forgery suspect, Gregory Barrett. Amount $450,000. Date, September 12, 2023. I looked up, my mouth open. He stole from you. He tried, Josephine said. He forged my signature to access a trust fund. He thought I was too senile to notice. He thought I was rotting away in a clinic in Switzerland, medicated and oblivious. She smiled again. He didn't know I own the bank, Sloane. The alert came to my personal phone before the ink was dry. Why didn't you stop him then? I asked. Because I was waiting, she said. I was watching. I wanted to see how far he would go. I wanted to see what he would do with the money. What did he do with it? He bought a boat, she said, and a diamond bracelet for Patricia, and he paid off a very large gambling debt. She pointed at the house again. He plays the role of the successful provider, but he is rotting from the inside out. He is broke, Sloane. He has been living on credit and stolen money for 3 years. My mind raced. The dinners, the vacations, the gifts. The private schools, it was all a lie. He's broke, I repeated. Destitute, she said. And desperate. That's why he was so cruel to you about your startup. He's jealous. You actually built something. He just steals things and paints them gold. I looked back at the house. The flashlight beams were moving faster now. I could sense the panic rising. They were realizing the power wasn't coming back on. My father wasn't just a bully. He was a thief, a fraud. My fear evaporated, completely. You can be scared of a monster, but you can't be scared of a clown. And that's what he was. A sad, broke clown dancing in the dark. I'm ready, I said. I closed the folder. Not yet, Josephine said. Let them get a little colder. Let the house drop another 5 degrees. I want him to understand the physics of the situation. She checked her watch, a diamond-encrusted Rolex. 5 more minutes, she said. Then we knock. I settled back into the seat. I watched the dark house. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for my father to tell me what to do. I was waiting for the signal to destroy him. I stared at the window where he had toasted his perfect family just 20 minutes ago. Freeze, I thought. Freeze, you bastard. It was the most honest thought I'd ever had. We had 5 minutes left before the invasion. Inside the limousine, the air was still and warm. Outside, the wind was battering the car, shaking the heavy frame slightly. But inside, it felt like a bunker. A safe room. I was staring at the folder in my lap, but my mind was drifting back to 3 days ago. That was when I had come home. I remembered the drive. I remembered crying the entire 4 hours from the city to the estate. I had packed my whole life into 3 cardboard boxes and a suitcase. My startup Echo was supposed to be the next big thing in data encryption. I had spent 3 years sleeping under my desk. I ate ramen. I skipped holidays. I put every ounce of my brain and soul into that code. And then, 2 weeks before our public launch, it fell apart. My lead investor pulled his funding overnight. Then, a competitor launched a product that was almost identical to mine, down to the user interface. My company was worthless before it even opened. I lost the office lease. I lost my apartment. I had $400 in my bank account. So I came home. I came back to the safety of the Barrett estate. I walked through the front door with my head down, ready to beg for a room in the house I grew up in. I remembered my father's reaction. He hadn't hugged me. He had sighed. He looked at my boxes like they were bags of trash that the garbage men had forgotten to pick up. Failure, he had said, is a smell, Sloane, and you reek of it. I believed him. I thought I was incompetent. I thought I had just been outsmarted by the market. Sloane, Josephine's voice snapped me back to the present. She was watching me again. You're thinking about your company, she said. It wasn't a question. It failed, I said dully. I wasn't good enough. The market ate me alive. Josephine reached over and flipped the page in the folder on my lap. Read, she commanded. I looked at the document. It was an email printout. To Marcus Thorne, CEO of Velocity Tech from Gregory Barrett. Subject: Project Echo source code and acquisition date. November 14, 2025. My heart stopped. November 14th. That was 3 weeks ago. 1 week before my investor pulled out. I read the body of the email. Marcus, as discussed, attached is the proprietary algorithm for the Echo encryption key. My daughter is brilliant, but she lacks the infrastructure to protect it. I am authorized to act as her silent proxy. I am willing to transfer full rights to Velocity Tech for the sum of $2.4 million, deposited into the Cayman account discussed previously. In exchange, you launch immediately. Her investors will get cold feet and pull out. The company will fold. She will be none the wiser. It's just business. Regards, Gregory. I couldn't breathe. The paper shook in my hands. He sold it, I whispered. My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. He didn't just watch me fail, he sold my work. He stole your work, Josephine corrected. He accessed your server using the password you gave him for emergency backup 3 years ago. He downloaded your life's work, sold it to your biggest competitor, and used the money to pay off his gambling debts. I felt sick, physically sick. The image of my father sitting at dinner tonight, mocking my failure, flashed in my mind. Winners find a way, losers find excuses. He had said that to me while eating shrimp bought with my money. He had lectured me on incompetence while wearing a suit paid for by my genius. He destroyed me, I said. The anger was rising again, hotter this time. He watched me cry for 3 days. He watched me pack my boxes. He told me I wasn't smart enough. He gaslit you, Josephine said. He needed you to fail. If you succeeded, you would have money, you would have power, you wouldn't need him. And worse, he needed the cash. He cannibalized his own daughter to keep his lights on. She pointed to the dark house. Well, the lights are off now. I looked at the email again. $2.4 million. That was the price of my dignity. That was the price of my father's love. How did you get this? I asked. I have friends in low places, Josephine said dryly. And Marcus Thorne is a fool. He bragged about the deal at a gala I attended in London. He didn't know Sloane Barrett was my granddaughter. He thought it was just a funny story about a ruthless father. She leaned in close. I bought the rights back, Sloane. I stared at her. What? I bought Velocity Tech yesterday morning, she said casually, as if she were talking about buying a carton of milk. Hostile takeover. Cost me a fortune, but I consider it an investment. Your code is safe. Your company is safe. It's sitting under the umbrella of Whitmore Holdings, waiting for its CEO to return. I felt tears prick my eyes again, but these were different. These were tears of relief. My work wasn't gone. I wasn't a failure. You did that for me. I did it for the family, she said sternly. The real family. Competence must be protected. Parasites must be removed. She took the folder back and closed it. Now you know the truth. You aren't the sad little girl who couldn't cut it in the big city. You are a tech innovator who was robbed by a con artist. She looked at me expectantly. Does that change how you feel about walking through that door? I looked at the house. The flashlight beams were frantic now. I could see shadows moving past the windows. They were probably looking for candles. They were probably shivering. Yes, I said. My voice was hard. I don't feel sad for them anymore, I said. I don't feel like I owe them an explanation. Good, Josephine said. I feel like I'm coming to collect a debt. Josephine smiled. It was the first time I had ever seen her look truly proud. That is exactly the attitude required, she said. Gregory Barrett thinks he is the king of the castle because he has a loud voice and a heavy hand. He is about to learn that a king without a kingdom is just a man in a funny chair. She checked her watch again. Time is up, she announced. The house is sufficiently frozen. The panic has set in. They are primed. She pressed the intercom button. Driver, she said. We are moving. Yes, ma'am, the engine purred. The car didn't move forward, though. The driver just turned on the high beams. Twin shafts of blinding white light cut through the snowstorm. They hit the front of the house like spotlights on a prison break. The light flooded the living room window, illuminating the dark interior. I saw them freeze inside. Gregory, Patricia, Reese, they stopped moving. They looked out at the light. They couldn't see us, but they knew something was out here. Let them wonder for 10 seconds, Josephine said. Let them wonder if it's the police. Let them wonder if it's the bank coming to repossess the furniture. We sat there, bathed in the glow of the headlights reflecting off the snow. You ready to go back out into the cold? Josephine asked. I looked at the wool coat. I looked at my hands. I thought about the $2.4 million. I thought about the lock on the back door. I'm not cold anymore, I said. Good, Josephine said. Because we are bringing the fire. Josephine pressed the intercom one last time. Execute phase 2, enter the premises. It sounded like a military command, and in a way it was. The locks on the limousine doors clicked open. The sound was loud in the quiet cabin. Let's go, she said. The driver opened Josephine's door. A second man, dressed in a black suit and a heavy black overcoat, appeared at my door. He opened it. The wind hit me again. It was still screaming. It was still 10 degrees below zero. The snow was still falling in heavy, wet sheets. But this time I didn't flinch. I stepped out of the car. My boots crunched into the snow. I stood up straight. The wool coat Josephine had given me was heavy, like armor. I buttoned it to the chin. I looked toward the house. From the darkness of the driveway, 2 more men emerged. They were big, broad-shouldered. They wore earpieces and dark sunglasses, even though it was night. They moved with a synchronized, predatory grace. Security, Josephine said, stepping up beside me. She had put on a fur hat and leather gloves. She looked impeccable. She looked like she owned the winter. Are they armed? I asked, whispering. They are lawyers, she said, which is far more dangerous. She pointed to the man on the left. That is Mr. Vance. He is my personal attorney. He is carrying the eviction notices. She pointed to the man on the right. That is Mr. Halloway. He is private security. He is here to ensure that if Gregory decides to throw a temper tantrum, he hits the floor before he hits anyone else. We stood there, a phalanx in the snow. Ready? Josephine asked me. I looked at the front door. It was massive, oak and glass. It was the door I had walked through 1,000 times. It was the door I had been afraid to open earlier this week because I didn't want to disappoint my father. Now it just looked like wood. I have nothing, I said suddenly. The doubt flickered for a second. I have no money, I have no clothes, my stuff is in there. Josephine turned to me. The wind whipped her coat around her legs, but she stood like a statue. You have the deed, Sloane, she said. I blinked. What? You just don't know it yet, she said. She smiled faintly. But you will in about 3 minutes. She gestured toward the house. Walk with me. We started walking. It was a slow march. We didn't run. We didn't hurry. We walked up the center of the driveway, illuminated by the limo's headlights behind us. Our shadows stretched out in front of us, long and distorted against the snow, reaching the house before we did. We were ghosts come to reclaim the living. I saw movement in the window. My father had come to the glass. He was squinting against the glare of the headlights. He held a candlestick in his hand, an antique silver one that had belonged to my mother. He must have seen us coming. 2 women and 2 men in black coats, marching out of the blizzard. It must have looked terrifying. I hoped it did. We reached the front steps. They were slick with ice. Gregory hadn't bothered to salt them. He probably expected the gardener to come on Christmas Day to do it. Mr. Halloway, the security guard, stepped forward first. He didn't knock. He didn't ring the doorbell, which wouldn't have worked anyway without power. He simply tried the handle. Locked. Of course. Gregory locked everything. He locked the doors, the windows, the cabinets, the emotions. Mr. Halloway looked at Josephine. Josephine nodded once. Mr. Halloway reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metallic tool, a lockpick gun. "Is that legal?" I whispered. "It's my house," Josephine said loud enough for the wind to carry the words. "I can break into my own property if I lost my keys." Snap, the lock clicked. The heavy mechanism turned. The door swung open. The wind rushed past us, blowing snow into the grand foyer. We stepped inside. The silence of the house was jarring. Usually there was music. There was the hum of the heater. There was noise. Now it was dead silent. And it was cold. The heat had been off for almost 30 minutes. The large, open spaces of the mansion sucked the warmth out quickly. I could already feel the chill in the air. We stood in the foyer. Across the hall, the dining room was illuminated by the flickering light of 3 candles placed on the table. The family was there. They looked like a portrait of refugees in their own home. Patricia was wrapped in a tablecloth. Reese was huddled next to her, still clutching her designer bag, looking annoyed and shivering. Gregory stood in the middle of the room. He was holding the silver candlestick like a weapon. He looked furious. His hair was messed up. His tie was loosened. He squinted at us in the gloom. "Who is that?" he barked. His voice echoed in the cold house. "I'm calling the police. Get out of my house." Mr. Vance, the attorney, stepped forward. He clicked a heavy flashlight on. The beam cut through the darkness and hit Gregory square in the face. Gregory flinched, throwing a hand up to shield his eyes. "Put that down," he screamed. Then Josephine stepped into the light. She didn't shout. She didn't yell. She just took off her leather gloves, finger by finger. "Hello, Gregory," she said. The silence that followed was heavy, heavier than the snow, heavier than the dark. Gregory lowered his hand slowly. His face went from red to pale white in the span of a second. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. "Mother," he whispered. "In the flesh," Josephine said. "Though I admit it's a bit colder in here than I expected. Did you forget to pay the bill?" Patricia let out a shriek. "Josephine, oh my God, we thought. Greg said you were dead," Josephine finished for her. "Incapacitated." Drooling in a cup in Zurich, she walked forward. Her heels clicked loudly on the marble floor. Click, click, click. She stopped 10 feet from him. "I was never sick, Gregory," she said. "I was just tired of you, so I took a vacation. But vacations end." She motioned to me. "Step forward, Sloane." I stepped out from behind the security guard. I walked into the pool of light. My father looked at me. He looked at the heavy wool coat. He looked at my dry face. He looked at the way I was standing, not slouched, not cowering. "Sloane," he said. He sounded confused. I told you to stay on the patio." "I know," I said. My voice was steady. It was the steadiest it had ever been. "But grandmother offered me a ride, and she has a much better heater than you do." Reese spoke up from the table. "Why is the power out? Did you do this?" "My phone is at 10%. Quiet," Gregory snapped at her. He looked back at Josephine. He was trying to regain his composure. He straightened his jacket. He put on his negotiator face. "Mother," he said, forcing a smile that looked painful. "What a surprise, a wonderful surprise. We were just having Christmas dinner. Please come in, we can." "Well, we can't offer you much warmth right now. The power seems to be down." "The power is down because I cut it," Josephine said. Gregory blinked. "You." "What?" "I cut the line," she said. "I wanted to see how you handled a freeze. You seem to be fond of using cold as a punishment. I thought you might enjoy a taste of it." She looked at the dining table. The half-eaten food was getting cold. The wine was sitting there. "Turn off the music," she said, even though there was no music playing. It was a reflex of command. She looked around the room with disgust. "You've changed the drapes," she said. "Tacky? Mother, please," Gregory said, his voice straining. "I don't know what's going on, but let's be reasonable." Sloane was being difficult. It was a parenting decision. "A parenting decision," Josephine repeated. She turned to Mr. Vance. "Mr. Vance, what is the legal definition of locking a human being outside in sub-zero temperatures without protective clothing?" Mr. Vance opened his briefcase. The sound of the latches snapping open was loud. Thwack, thwack. He pulled out a paper. 45 minutes of exposure in sub-zero weather, he recited in a monotone voice. Reckless endangerment. Attempted manslaughter in most states. And given the specific clauses of the Whitmore Trust, he looked up over his glasses. A breach of contract, Gregory laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. Contract? What contract? I'm her father. I don't have a contract to raise my own daughter. No, Josephine said. You don't, but you do have a contract to live in this house. She took a step closer. Or rather, you did. The air in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. This is my house, Gregory spat. You gave it to me 10 years ago. I gave you access, Josephine said. I never gave you the deed. She nodded to Vance. Show him. Vance placed a document on the dining table, right next to the shrimp cocktail. The confrontation starts now, Josephine whispered to me. Don't blink. I didn't blink. I watched my father pick up the paper. I watched his hands shake. The reckoning had begun. The front door didn't open, it surrendered to the cold. My grandmother walked into the dining room like judgment in heels. The room was freezing now. You could feel the temperature dropping by the minute. The candles on the table flickered in the draft, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Gregory stared at the paper Mr. Vance had placed on the table. He picked it up. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. What is this? He demanded. He tried to sound authoritative, but his voice cracked. This is nonsense. I have the title, I have the mortgage papers in my safe. You have a lease, Josephine said calmly. She was standing near the fireplace, which was dark and cold. She didn't look at him. She was inspecting a speck of dust on the mantel. A lease that I graciously allowed you to sign for $1 a year. But if you read paragraph 4, section C, you'll see the termination clause. Gregory squinted at the document in the dim candlelight. Termination, he sputtered. You can't terminate my lease. I've lived here for 20 years, I've made improvements. You painted the walls beige and sold the antique chandelier to pay for a ski trip, Josephine said. She turned to face him. Her eyes were like ice. That is not an improvement, that is vandalism. Patricia stood up. She was shivering violently now, wrapped in the tablecloth. Josephine, please, she whined. We're freezing. Can't we discuss this when the power is back on? Can't we just sit down and be a family? A family, Josephine laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Is that what you were doing when you locked Sloane outside? Being a family, Patricia looked at me. For the first time, she really looked at me. She saw the heavy wool coat. She saw the expensive boots. She saw that I wasn't the shivering, pathetic girl who had begged for mashed potatoes an hour ago. We were teaching her a lesson, Patricia stammered. She was being disrespectful to her father. So you froze her, Josephine asked. It was just 5 minutes, Gregory lied. Mr. Vance, Josephine said. Mr. Vance checked his watch. 52 minutes, actually. The temperature outside is currently minus 12 degrees with the wind chill. According to medical data, frostbite begins to set in on exposed skin after 30 minutes. He looked at Gregory with zero emotion. You didn't teach her a lesson, Mr. Barrett. You committed a felony. Gregory slammed the paper down on the table. I am her father, he shouted. The noise made everyone jump except Josephine. I can discipline my daughter however I see fit. She is my child. She lives under my roof. Ah, Josephine said. She held up a finger. And there it is, the fatal error. She walked slowly toward the table. Under your roof? She asked softly. Yes, Gregory yelled. My roof, my house, my rules. Josephine smiled. It was a terrifying smile. Gregory, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than his screaming. You haven't owned a roof since 1998. She nodded to Mr. Vance. Show him the real deed. Mr. Vance reached into the briefcase again. He pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. It looked old. The edges were slightly yellowed. He placed it directly over the shrimp cocktail platter. 26 years ago, Mr. Vance began, speaking clearly so everyone could hear, Miss Josephine Whitmore transferred all assets of Whitmore Holdings, including real estate, stock portfolios, and the family trust into a holding company. Gregory was breathing hard. He was sweating despite the cold. So what? He snapped. I control the holding company. I'm the executor. You are the acting executor, Vance corrected. A temporary position. Designed to hold the assets in place until a specific condition was met. What condition? Gregory demanded. Vance pointed to the bottom of the document. The assets were to be held in trust, Vance read, until the first direct female heir reached the age of 26. The room went silent. Dead silent. I felt my heart hammer against my ribs. 26. I turned 26 last week. On the same day my company collapsed. On the same day I came home crying. Gregory froze. He stared at the document. He knew the date. He knew my birthday. No, he whispered. Yes, Josephine said. You can't do that, Gregory stammered. She's incompetent. She just bankrupted a company. She can't manage an estate. She bankrupted a company because you stole her code and sold it to her competitor, Josephine said. Her voice lashed out like a whip. Don't think I forgot about that, Gregory. We'll be discussing the embezzlement charges later, but right now, we are discussing the house. She walked over to me. She placed a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and grounding. Mr. Vance, she said, who is the legal owner of this property, effective immediately? Mr. Vance looked at the paper. The deed transferred automatically at 12:01 a.m. on November 15th, he said. He looked at me. The owner is Miss Sloane Barrett. My father's glass slipped from his hand. It hit the marble floor and shattered. Red wine splattered everywhere, looking like blood on the white stone. Sloane, Patricia gasped. She looked at me with horror. Sloane owns the house. She owns the house, Josephine confirmed. She owns the cars. She owns the furniture. She owns the fork you are holding, Patricia. And she certainly owns the heating system which, as the owner, she has decided to turn off for maintenance. Gregory was staring at me. His face was a mask of pure shock. You knew, he whispered to me. You knew this whole time. You set me up. I stepped forward. I looked him in the eye. No, I said. I didn't know. I took a breath. The air was cold, but I felt on fire. I came home thinking I was a failure, I said. I came home thinking I needed your help. I begged you for a place to stay, and you treated me like a stray dog. Sloane, listen, Gregory started, his voice changing instantly. The anger vanished. The charm appeared. It was sickening to watch. He stepped over the broken glass, holding his hands out. Honey, you have to understand, I was under a lot of stress. The business. It's been hard. I was just trying to toughen you up. It's a tough world out there. He tried to smile. It was a weak, trembling smile. I'm your dad, he said. We're a team, right? You and me. Think about what we can do with this estate now. I can help you manage it. You don't know how to run a property this size. I can. Stop, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it stopped him dead in his tracks. You sold my company, I said. He blinked. What? Project Echo, I said. You sold it to Velocity Tech for $2.4 million. You stole my work. You stole my future. His face went gray. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know, I said. I know you aren't a father, you're a thief. I looked at Patricia. She was clutching her pearls, looking from Gregory to me, calculating her odds. And you, I said to her. You watched him lock me out. You sat there eating shrimp while I froze. You laughed. I didn't laugh, Patricia cried. I was nervous. It was a nervous laugh. Sloane, I love you. I've always treated you like my own. You treated me like a prop, I said. And Reese treated me like an ATM. Reese, who had been quiet this whole time, stood up. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She grabbed her new handbag. I'm going to a hotel. Dad, give me the credit card. Mr. Vance cleared his throat. I'm afraid all credit cards associated with the Barrett accounts have been frozen as of an hour ago, he said politely. Fraud protection triggered by the transfer of ownership. Reese froze. What? You're broke, Josephine said, pouring herself a glass of water from the pitcher on the table. Actually, it's worse than that. You're in debt. The credit cards are maxed out. Gregory fell into his chair. He put his head in his hands. This can't be happening, he mumbled. I had a plan. I had it all under control. You had nothing, Josephine said. You were playing house with money that wasn't yours. She turned to me. Well, Miss Barrett, she asked. This is your house. These are your trespassers. Mr. Vance is waiting for your instructions. I looked at them. I looked at the father who had bullied me my whole life. I looked at the stepmother who had made me feel ugly and small. I looked at the stepsister who had stolen my childhood. They were all looking at me now. Waiting. Hoping. Sloane, Gregory said, looking up. There were tears in his eyes now. Real tears, fake tears, I didn't care anymore. Please, it's Christmas, you can't just do anything crazy. Let's talk about this in the morning. I remembered the cold. I remembered the sound of the lock sliding shut. I remembered standing in the snow, watching them toast to their perfect life. I looked at Mr. Vance. What are my options? I asked. You have the right to immediate eviction, Vance said. They have no lease. They have no tenancy agreement. They are, legally speaking, squatters. Eviction? Patricia shrieked. Now, tonight, in a blizzard. It is cold out there, I said softly. About 10 below zero. I looked at my father. But don't worry, I said. I won't make you stand on the patio. Hope flared in his eyes. Thank you, Sloane, he breathed. I knew you were reasonable. I knew you were good. I'm not making you stand on the patio, I continued, my voice hardening like steel, because I want you off the property completely. I pointed to the door. Get out. The silence in the room was absolute. Sloane, Gregory whispered, you can't mean that. I want them out, I said to Mr. Vance. Now, tonight, right this second. Understood, Vance said. He signaled to the security guards. Mr. Halloway and the other guards stepped forward. They looked massive in the flickering candlelight. You heard the owner, Halloway rumbled. Let's go. Wait, Patricia screamed. My clothes, my jewelry, I need to pack. You leave with what you are wearing, I said. Everything else in this house was bought with money from the trust. It belongs to the estate, it belongs to me. You can't keep my clothes, Reese yelled. That bag is mine, I just got it. Actually, I said, looking at the silver wrapping paper on the floor. That bag was bought with the card linked to the account my father stole from me, so technically I bought it for myself. Thanks for unwrapping it. I held out my hand. Reese stared at me. She looked at the security guard. He took a step toward her. With a scream of frustration, she threw the bag at me. I caught it. Start walking, I said. The scene that followed was chaotic. It was loud. It was messy. And it was the most satisfying thing I have ever watched. The guards ushered them toward the door. Patricia was sobbing, trying to grab a silver vase as she passed a table, but Holloway gently removed it from her hand. Property of the estate, ma'am, he said. Gregory tried to dig his heels in at the door. Sloane, he yelled over his shoulder. We're family, you can't do this to family. I stood in the center of the foyer. The wind was blowing in through the open door, swirling snow across the marble. You're right, I said. Family doesn't do this. I walked up to him. I looked him in the eye one last time. You were my family, I said, until you changed the locks. Now, you're just a bad tenant. I nodded to Holloway. Remove him. Holloway gave a firm shove. Gregory stumbled out onto the icy porch. He slipped, falling to his knees in the exact spot where I had stood shivering an hour ago. Patricia and Reese stumbled out after him. They stood there in the snow. They were wearing evening clothes. Patricia in her silk dress, Gregory in his velvet jacket, Reese in a thin blouse. They looked small, they looked cold. Here, I said. I picked up the 3 coats from the coat rack by the door, the guest coats. They were thin, cheap coats we kept for visitors. I tossed them out onto the snow. I'm not a monster, I said. Put those on. The walk to the main gate is a mile. You'll need them. The gate, Gregory yelled, scrambling to put on the coat. We can't walk to the gate. Let us take the cars. The cars are company property, Josephine called out from the dining room. She had walked out, holding a glass of wine. And I've revoked your driving privileges. Besides, the keys are in the safe. My father looked at us. He looked at the warm, dark house he had ruled for 20 years. He looked at the daughter he had tormented. You'll regret this, he screamed. The wind tore the words from his mouth. You'll need me, you don't know how to run this place. I'll figure it out, I said. I'm a quick learner. I learned from the best. I looked at Josephine. She winked. I grabbed the heavy oak door. Goodbye, Dad, I said. Don't forget to write. I slammed the door. I threw the deadbolt. Click. The sound echoed through the house. It was the sound of a prison cell opening, not closing. I was free. I leaned my back against the door and exhaled. My legs felt weak, but my spirit felt light. Well done, Josephine said. She was standing in the foyer, illuminated by Mr. Vance's flashlight. She looked like a queen surveying a battlefield. Is it over? I asked. The battle is over, she said. The war for your future has just begun. We have a company to rebuild. We have a house to renovate. I wasn't joking about the drapes. They are hideous. I laughed. It was a real laugh. It bubbled up from my chest and filled the empty hallway. I can't believe they're walking, I said. In the snow. It builds character, Josephine said. Isn't that what he always told you? She walked over and handed me the glass of wine she had been holding. To the new CEO of Whitmore Holdings, she said. I took the glass. I looked around the dark, cold house. It was freezing in here, but I didn't feel it. I felt the warmth of ownership. I felt the heat of justice. To the hostile takeover, I said. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. Now, Josephine said, pulling her fur coat tighter. Let's get the heater back on, I'm freezing. How do we do that? I asked. Simple, she said. She pulled out her phone. I call the driver. He flips the switch back at the junction box. She dialed. Driver, execute phase 3, power up. 10 seconds later, the house hummed. The chandelier above us blazed to life, flooding the foyer with golden light. The Christmas tree in the corner lit up. The furnace kicked on with a low rumble. The darkness was gone. I walked to the window and looked out. I couldn't see them. The storm had swallowed them up. There were just 3 sets of footprints leading away from the house, slowly being filled in by the snow. I closed the drapes. He locked me out in 10 degrees below zero to teach me a lesson. He wanted to show me that I was powerless. He wanted to show me that I needed him. Instead, my grandmother arrived and showed me who really owned the kingdom. I stood by the window as the house warmed up, realizing that family isn't about blood. It's about who hands you a coat when you're freezing and who locks the door. If you've ever been frozen out by the people who were supposed to love you, hit subscribe, share your story in the comments. And remember, when they lock you out, don't just stand there knocking. Buy the building and change the locks. Silence doesn't mean surrender, it means strategy.